Welcome to this week's edition of the A2Schools podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Cluley, the Director of Communications with the Ann Arbor Public Schools. This week, we're going to be focused in on a lot of the capital programs that the summer construction work that has happened on across the Ann Arbor Public Schools. I'm joined today, as always, our Superintendent, Dr. Janice Swift. Thank you for joining me, Dr. Swift.
It's wonderful to be with you, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you. And then also, since we're working on buildings and capital programs, we've got the people that are involved in that. We'll start with Bernerd Rice. He's the Assistant Superintendent of Capital Programs and Physical Properties. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Andrew, for the invite. I greatly appreciate it.
Well, great. And then we also have Jason Bing. He's the Director of Capital Programs for the AAPS.
Thank you, Andrew. Great to be here today.
And finally today, Stephanie Corona, Project Executive of the Gilbane Building Company, is here to talk about the work. Thanks for joining us, Stephanie.
Thank you, Andrew.
So there's been a lot of construction done this summer, and I know that there's a lot more to do. But Dr. Swift, what are your overall thoughts on what you're seeing in the buildings this fall?
Well, thank you, Andrew. It's just a great time in the Ann Arbor Public Schools. You know, we've been working on this endeavor around our infrastructure, our buildings in the Ann Arbor Public Schools. We call it the Capital Program. It is a combination of our 2019 bond and our sinking fund that we've had for many years. And those resources are helping us to really respond to a facilities assessment evaluation that we did a few years ago and really bring our buildings up to excellent quality physical spaces for teaching and learning. It's been about 2 years now that we've been deep in this work. We began phase one back in 2020, and this phase one of our work will extend through 2024. This is really the part of our plan that has to do with the basic infrastructure. So you'll see things like air conditioning and LED lighting and solar installations and paving and roofing. It's just really those nuts and bolts of bringing our buildings up to a much better standard. So I'm so excited to be joined by this team today. We will be sharing, they'll be sharing a presentation with the board and community, but just love having everyone as a part of this podcast conversation today where we can just talk very informally about the work that's going on in our schools.
And there certainly seemed to be a lot of work going on in our schools this summer. I don't know if you drove around Ann Arbor at all this summer. It seemed like almost any time you saw a school building, you saw some work going on. Jason or Stephanie, can you share a little bit of an overview of how much buildings had work done and what type of things were getting done this summer?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Actually, we have been hard at work, as Dr. Swift said, on the phase one improvements. We were actually in 20 different campuses, completing 35 different projects, including 6 new construction starts for significant air conditioning and lighting projects, the continuation and completion of 5 other air conditioning and lighting projects. We had several paving projects, roofing projects, 3 solar projects, and we've been continuing to address other capital and critical infrastructure needs as identified in our facility conditions assessments.
Okay, now I think you've mentioned some of the big projects, the big areas of projects. One area that you didn't mention that I know that there was a lot of work in was in our middle school buildings. Can you talk about sort of what we were doing inside the middle schools?
In addition to the air conditioning and lighting, we actually did some improvements with classrooms, creating student service centers. We had the opportunity to regain classrooms back that over the years had been converted to other spaces. We actually added classrooms, improved entrances, created a security vestibule. So we did just more than air conditioning and lighting projects this summer. In addition, we also did data improvements. And we also added fire suppression to several of our buildings, in addition to improving some of our campuses.
Yeah, one of the unique aspects of our projects at Forsyth and Clegg this summer, 2 construction starts, we're really investing in moving towards an all-electric facility in those locations. So we have pretty significant geothermal exterior vertical boreholes being constructed out in the fields just adjacent to those facilities to support a new high performance heating, ventilation, and cooling system at those facilities.
I'm assuming that's part of the environmentally friendly commitment that Ann Arbor Public Schools made when the 2019 bond was passed.
That's correct. We made commitments to environmental sustainability, including solar, geothermal, and on the whole, healthier, higher performance buildings throughout the AAPS.
When we talk about the projects that were underway this summer, mostly completed, what was the way that the specific work that was getting done in 2022, summer 2022 done? How were those projects selected?
Well, the focus was for phase 1, which was to focus on air conditioning and lighting. The buildings that were chosen first were the ones that had the greatest temperature in them. Ones that needed to be addressed first were anything that was multi-story, where you have second and third floors, where the heat gets pretty extensive in the summertime or in the fall or late spring months. So we focused on those buildings first.
Yeah, and we were able to prioritize based on that facility conditions assessment. We created sort of a ranking scale, which allowed us to address those facilities that had the greatest need first.
I would add that this plan for summer 2022 really is in keeping with the phase 1 plan that was laid out for the board and the community and received public engagement back during 2020. So we really are in this process now of keeping the promises and the commitments that we made back during the campaign, and then as a part of the phase 1 that really designated the projects and the timeline.
Yes, and I'm sure that the challenges of also making sure that we had facilities available for the various summer programs, Rec and Ed, and all that had to be taken into account a bit as well.
Absolutely. It was just an amazing effort. And I just want to step in and thank this team who's with us today for all of the work that they did to make it happen. 35 projects over 79 days of summer is an extraordinary effort. I have heard throughout our buildings and in our community the thanks and the gratitude from our students and staff and parents and families. And we are so grateful also to the staffs who had to move in and out on pretty short turnarounds in order to make this work. We're just so excited about the work and appreciate everyone's contributions and participation to make it happen.
Yeah, I was hoping maybe Mr. Bang, you can talk a little bit about those challenges of actually getting the work done in, as Dr. Swift mentioned, just 79 days from mid to late June to basically mid-August. I know that some of the buildings, it didn't seem like on the outside, it was like, oh my gosh, this building's not going to be ready. And yet there they were. They were all ready on opening day.
Yeah, well, as Dr. Swift and Stephanie mentioned, it's a huge team effort. And not only were our construction managers critical in coordinating all of that work, but we do owe a large debt of gratitude to our building administrators, staff, and students for supporting all of this work. At the beginning of the construction season or the end of the academic year, we asked building administrators, teachers, and building staff to really help support a massive logistics effort in trying to move furniture and books and equipment to different locations, either in the building or out of the building in short order. We got in tremendous support with staff being flexible, creative, adaptive, and just overall extremely patient as we prepared for taking over the facility. And then, towards the end of the summer, end of the construction season and the beginning of the school year, we ask everybody to come back and help us put the buildings back together. And in very short order, again, folks were flexible, creative, and again, patient as we cleaned and got everything ready, really up to the 11th hour. That 79 days is a real tight window. It requires a whole bunch of scheduling, sequencing, coordination, but it really requires teamwork. And we received that from all of our schools that we were working with. So we really appreciate all that help.
As you talk about planning, that just makes me think, we've got a lot of great work done this summer. I know there's a lot more kids that are in classrooms that have air conditioning thanks to the work that was done this summer. But what are we thinking about in terms of what's coming next for the capital projects in the Ann Arbor Public Schools?
Well, I mean, we're still continuing the phase 1 portion, and that's our next round of schools that don't have air conditioning. So we'll be focusing on another round, not just next summer, but the summer afterwards in 2024.
We're going to be working on creating a plan to move into phase 2 of the bond program, which will involve lining up architects and engineers for planning and design for projects moving forward. We're going to be going through a whole bunch more procurement cycles, lining up all the upcoming work for upcoming summers and later on construction seasons. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but we're excited to finish up this phase 1 work and move into our next phase of our bond initiatives.
As we're wrapping up this conversation about the summer construction work, the Ann Arbor Public Schools capital projects, Dr. Swift, did you have any final thoughts?
Thank you, Andrew. We are so excited really to see phase 1 of the bond work just really gain momentum over this summer, throughout the bond campaign and throughout previous years in the Ann Arbor community. Just that simple request for air conditioning and for updating to the infrastructure of our district, those were really the top requests from our community. I'm just so grateful to every member of our community for their support. The support of our voters, our parents and families, our students and staff. This is a community endeavor, and we know that quality communities are known by quality schools, and our average age currently in our buildings around 65 years of age. We have known that this effort would be important. So it's really great to see that coming out of the gate. And we'll look forward to December and completing the annual report for the capital programming in Ann Arbor Public Schools. And then also that December timeline to really look at phase 2, which will be the work beginning in 2025, moving forward from that time for the next chapter in this overall capital improvement program in the Ann Arbor Public Schools. So thank you, team, for joining us to tell this great story, and thanks to everyone.
Well, I know looking at the buildings this fall is a lot of good news, but that's not the only good news in the Ann Arbor Public Schools. I also want to celebrate and recognize 39 Ann Arbor Public Schools students who were recently named semifinalists in the 2023 National Merit Scholarship Program. Quite the honor for Ann Arbor Public Schools and these students. Overall, AAPS students account for over 8% of the 466 students in Michigan selected as National Merit semifinalists. Quite the recognition, isn't it, Dr. Swift?
Oh, it's wonderful. And congratulations from the Ann Arbor Public Schools, from all your teachers and your families and our community. What a tremendous achievement. And we're so proud of our students who have achieved this designation of National Merit Scholar.
And of course, this recognition isn't necessarily the last step in the process. The semifinalists will have the opportunity to continue in the competition with about 7,200 National Merit Scholarships awarded annually, with the value that's expected this year or next spring will be $28 million. So good luck to all of the AAPS students as they move forward in the competition.
Absolutely.
So it's come to the time for the big question on the A2Schools podcast. This week, we're going to talk about Student Count Day. I know that there's been some controversy around it. Dr. Swift, can you share a little bit more about what families can expect about Count Day in the Ann Arbor Public Schools?
Yes, thank you. Well, most unfortunately, Count Day, designated by the state of Michigan for next Wednesday, October 5th, is scheduled this year in conflict with Yom Kippur, the most holy day of observance in the Jewish calendar. This day is designated as a 3-star holiday on our Ann Arbor Public Schools religious calendar. And we just really want to take a moment to reassure our students, our staff, our parents, and families that we absolutely recognize this conflict. We have taken steps with the state and have been unable to move the day because of some specifics in the law. But yet we want to reassure everyone that our students and staff, our parents and families will be fully supported and honored in their observance of this holy day, and really to reassure everyone that the fall count is an administrative function of the district, and it really occurs over many days during the month of October. So there is no specific day where all of the credit for count, it does not revolve around any specific day. So we just really want to reassure everyone. We want to support our Jewish students and staff, families, and community in their observance. And we wish a wonderful and meaningful Yom Kippur, and just really reassuring everyone that it does not come down to the single day. So I hope that that's helpful. Andrew, we did issue a much more thorough statement on this topic that I know you can link into the show notes so that folks can read more about that if they would like to.
And it also serves as a reminder that it's not just if you're celebrating Yom Kippur, but if you happen to not be healthy that day, you don't have to come in on, while you're sick to get credit. It's, if you're in the school on other days consistently, you get counted no matter what.
That's right. We really want to continue the practice that we've used this past 2 years of having folks remain home if they have symptoms or feel ill, or of course, at times of religious observance. So thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to clarify that so that we're reassuring folks around the coming days of October.
Yeah, I want to thank specifically Jason Bing for joining us today. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Andrew.
And we also want to give a thank you to Stephanie Corona, the project executive for the Gilbane Building Company, for talking today.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
And can't forget Bernerd Rice, Assistant Superintendent for Capital Programs and Physical Properties.
Thank you, Andrew.
And Dr. Swift, thank you for joining again on the A2Schools podcast.
It's wonderful. Thank you all, and we'll look forward to seeing everyone next week.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the A2Schools podcast. As always, if you have any questions, please go to a2schools.org, our website. Or if you have a specific question that you'd like to hear answered on a future episode of the A2Schools podcast, you can send that question to communications@a2schools.org. Thank you very much for listening to this week's edition of the A2 Schools podcast.